I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't feel like doing this right now. Welcome back to Movie Munchies. I'm Alexis. Today's treat day. We were doing this one backwards. I watched Saturday Night Fever. I don't think it deserves a cake, no. I've been sitting on it. It's been about 2 weeks since then now. And the more that I sat there editing that video, the more pissed off I was about that movie. I want to know what exactly happened in the PG version that, for whatever reason, has everybody like,
oh yeah, Saturday Night Fever, yay! That's a fun one.
They had to have hacked that down significantly to get it first to a PG rating and then to a place where everybody was like, yeah, what a fun disco movie. Let's move on, because I don't want to sit here all night. We will. It's 12:40 a.m. This video is probably going to be all over the place. Oh, it's treat day. Yeah, so regardless of whether or not Saturday Night Fever deserved the cake, we started this because it was Mom's 50th birthday. She asked me to make a cake. I was like, fine. This is the video of me making that cake. Let me just say, before we get into anything, this endeavor was the most time-consuming, mind-melting, physically and mentally draining, and emotionally draining task that I have ever, I will never do this again. Ever. I'm grateful for the experience. I am. And my mom enjoyed herself and her birthday and had a great time and loved her cake, but this is the longest I have ever spent working on a cake. There is a reason. There's a reason I stopped taking requests. This is that reason. Never again. I'm never doing it again. My back, my knees. It's not on video because I'm a big girl, but I cried several times. I called my mama. I was like, this isn't it. And then, to top that off, she had birthday plans from 6 p.m. on Friday through the night Saturday. So I had until Friday afternoon to get as much done on this cake as I could. And then I had to transport the pieces an hour and a half where we were staying at a retreat. Had to keep the cake in the fridge until the next day, transport it to the party place, which was a bowling alley. And then I had to put the cake together at the bowling alley, which is random bowling people there watching me. Let's get it started. The order in which you will be seeing all of this is not the order in which I did all of this. I baked the cakes Thursday night. So at this point, I was well and fed up with the entire thing. I'm pretty sure this was the night that I called my mom. Let me backtrack a little bit. I had to have conversations with my mother and ask her what she wanted out of this cake. And I will reenact the conversation that we had.
Mom, what flavor do you want this cake to be?
I want key lime, lemon, strawberry, and vanilla. But not just vanilla. I want French vanilla. Make it French. Make it fancy.
That makes no sense.
This woman wanted 4 flavors in her cake. And I guess in her mind, she was looking at the reference picture and she saw 4 tiers of cake. So she was like,
I know. 4 tiers. And each tier is a different flavor. Beautiful. You can do that. You can do that. I know you can. Because you can do everything.
My mom is my biggest cheerleader. Thank you. I'm really, truly grateful. The truth is I can't do everything, but I did my best here. So, the flavors that I went with, I said, okay, here's what I'm gonna do. The bottom tier, Key lime, which I've made before for her a couple of times. That's her favorite one. The middle tier, strawberry lemonade, which is combined two of those fruit flavors. The top tier, French vanilla. Who even knows how to make? I didn't know how to make a French vanilla cake. How do you make a French vanilla is an ice cream flavor. I figured it out. So, the baking. 3 tiers. The bottom was a 12-inch. The middle was a 10-inch. And the top was an 8-inch. I started with the key lime cake, which needed a ton of lime zest and lime juice. And for this recipe, I've made it a few times. It makes a really, really moist cake. The process for making it is a little different from other processes. Usually you would like cream butter and sugar together, then add the eggs, then add dry ingredients and wet ingredients like alternatively. This is not how this one goes. It's actually pretty simple. So for this one, start with eggs, milk, oil. I use vegetable oil, just like a neutral one, the lime zest, and the lime juice. In a separate bowl, I did the sugar, the flour, baking powder, baking soda, and salt. And then added it into the wet ingredients until it was just enough incorporated, and then I went and mixed it with a spatula by hand. You don't want to overmix your cakes, that messes with the texture. It makes them dense. So that went into the 12-inch pan that I had. I have never made a cake that big before. I had to go into the box in the closet and dig out the 12-inch cake pan to do this, but I only had one of those. So I had to do this 3 times. This was the first one. I did that same exact thing twice more. And then I did it again, this time for the lemon cake. I didn't film that part because there was no point. It's the exact same process. But I did, instead of lime zest and lime juice, lemon zest and lemon juice. And pretty much all of those went into the oven at 350 for like 35 to 40 minutes, give or take. I had to just go and rotate and check them periodically. So then once I had done the lime cakes and the lemon cakes, I did the French vanilla cake. I had never attempted this before. I just Googled French vanilla cake recipes. Initially, Google had said the difference between a regular vanilla cake and a French vanilla cake is just pretty much the egg content. A French vanilla cake is more of a yellow cake, and a regular vanilla cake is more of just a not yellow cake. In yellow cakes, you use more egg yolks to get that yellow color. This one was not that. So scratch all that I just said. This was not that. So the dry ingredients was flour, baking powder, and salt. And like a 3.4 ounce box of French vanilla pudding. Sifted that all together, set it off to the side to wait. I ran completely out of bowls by this point, so I had to use just what I could use. The wet ingredients was the French vanilla, milk, a little bit of oil, vegetable oil again, and vanilla. The recipe called for French vanilla extract, but where do you even find that? I don't know, but I used regular ass vanilla extract. It turned out just fine. And then for this one, I did do the regular cream, the butter, and the sugar together, and then slowly add the eggs. And then to that, I alternated the dry and the wet, 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 and the dry and on and on until it's done. And I didn't film the part where I put them in the oven. The French vanilla one going into the oven, that was the one I put in the 8-inch cake pans. Same temperature. Who the knows? How long was that in there? They were in there for an hour, maybe. I've been saying 350, but my notes say 325. I'm gonna assume my notes are correct, and I'm not. each of these cakes had a filling of sorts. For the key lime, I made lime cream cheese frosting. I have made this recipe several times, probably 3 different versions of it. Everybody's been asking for the key lime cake, so I stand by this key lime cake. That same exact recipe and this cream cheese frosting. So for the cream cheese frosting, I needed yet again a ton of lime zest and lime juice, except the limes sucked and had no juice in them for whatever reason. So I just used the juice from the fridge. Very, very simple. Butter, cream cheese. Cream those together for a little bit until they're well incorporated. And to that goes some powdered sugar, the lime zest, and the lime juice. It can be adjusted. If you want it sweeter, make it sweeter, add more sugar. If you want it less sweet, don't add as much sugar. If you want it more tart and zingy, add more lime juice, add more lime zest. I like double the amount that the recipe that I referenced called for. I like that if it's key lime, it better be limey. You know what I mean? So more juice, more zest. Gets it going. Super, super simple. I just packed that away and put it in the fridge until it was ready to add it to the cakes. And then also for the key lime tier, I did a graham cracker crumble. Very, very simple. Graham crackers, crushed up, melted butter, sugar, and a pinch of salt. Like a literal pinch. Sealed that away and then put it in the fridge for later use. For the strawberry lemonade cake, I decided to do a lemon curd and strawberry jam. I just store-bought the strawberry jam, but I made the lemon curd, which I've never done before. Again, more zesting, and this time the lemons actually had juice in them. They were plenty juicy. And this took like 2 egg yolks and 1 whole egg. Normally I think you would just use the yolks, but if you want a thicker curd, according to the recipe I was referencing, it said if you wanted a thicker curd, then use a whole egg along with that. Then some lemon juice, lemon zest, sugar. And I put that, I don't have a double boiler, so I just put it in a heat proof or whatever bowl on top of a pot of simmering water on the stove. Whisked it for a while. I think I like curds and custards, and I don't mind making them, but the whisking, the amount of time you spend standing there whisking, because you can't really leave it alone or it's gonna burn and curdle and do stuff you don't want it to do. But the whisking takes forever. So once it was thick enough, then that's ready to come off the stove. And like 1 tablespoon at a time, you add butter to it, whisk it in, and it melts from the heat of the curd. So I sealed that away into a bowl. I covered it with saran wrap so that it wouldn't form a film on top. So saran wrap directly on top of the curd, and then put the lid on. What is this? The buttercream. Okay, the buttercream. This was a German buttercream recipe that I use for pretty much everything that calls for a custard.
Why you make it more complicated for yourself?
I use this buttercream for all of the cakes, for each tier. So I had to make like a 5 times the amount of buttercream that I normally do, which required 16 egg yolks. 16 egg yolks. I did keep the egg whites. I have been eating them. I did not waste them. I'm still working on it. And to those 16 egg yolks was 8 cups of milk. 8. some sugar, salt, whisk that together until it was mixed enough. Then dumped about half of that into another bowl, and to that added cornstarch and flour. Those are the thickening agents, and I wanted it to be as lump-free as possible, so I sifted it slowly as I mixed the mixture together, and then strained it back into the pot with the rest of it. Once again, the amount of time you stand there waiting for it to thicken, and this is, again, 5 times the amount that I usually make, so I was standing there for a while. Also, I burned my finger. That was not the time. It was not the time to be burning my finger. The pot wasn't hot yet. And I knew the pot wasn't hot yet. So I was like wondering, is it even warm yet? You know what I mean? So I was just kind of touching the side of the pot to see if it was warm. It wasn't. But I tell you what I did. I just like skimmed my pinky along the eye of the stove, which was hot. So yeah. But I'm a trooper. I can pull through. So I just grabbed a manly ice pack and held it while I stood there whisking some more. Until it was finally thick. And like a hard to stir kind of thick. With 2 C's. 3 maybe. And then I put that through the sieve. Sieve? Sieve. 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 We didn't want lumps. I had to do it in batches because there was a lot. And again, covered it directly on top with plastic wrap so that it doesn't form a film. So once that was fully cooled, like completely cooled, room temperature, then I put a ton of butter into the mixing bowl. And just so you know, I was doing half of this at a time. So that's only part of the butter that I needed to make the amount of buttercream that I needed. To that butter, added sugar, and then the custard that I made. This is my my stand mixer was struggling a little bit. It was a lot in there. So once that was all fully incorporated, I dumped that into a big bowl and then did it again. Shit, how much butter? 8 cups. 8 cups of butter. There's like 2 cups of butter in each pack of butter. So I needed 4 packs of butter. And what I did was I portioned that out and then flavored each of those portions according to the flavor of cake that I was going to be using it for. So for the French vanilla, I did vanilla. Again, I didn't have French vanilla extract, so I used like vanilla bean paste. Vanilla bean paste and... is it called paste? That's what I usually add. When I make like regular buttercream, this is what is usually going into it. Yeah, vanilla bean paste and then vanilla extract. And then to the other 2 portions, I added lemon extract to one and then lime extract to the other. We're going back to the day that I made the cakes. This was late in the night. Didn't even bother to put on my apron. I think I remembered like halfway through and was like, who cares? At this point, I just want to be done. This is me stacking the strawberry lemonade. So I did a border of buttercream around the bottom and then poured in the lemon curd. Then added the strawberry jam on top and gave it a little bit of a swirl. In hindsight, this ended up being a really soft filling. Like, it was good. It was so good. But the filling was so soft that it got squished in between the other 2 layers, which caused some structural issues in the long run, and we'll get to that when it's time. I would like to make this one again, but not as a middle tier. Also, all of these cakes were so moist already that I didn't bother to simple syrup them. They were going to be eaten within the next 2 days. And if I had added simple syrup to them, they would have disintegrated, so I didn't bother. Then I crumb coated and put it in the fridge until it was ready to be iced. So for the French vanilla one, I didn't put a filling. I just did the vanilla buttercream in between each layer and frosted it on the outside with the same buttercream. It seemed appropriate enough. The key lime cake and the strawberry lemonade cake were just kind of like out there flavors. This was the one that was like just a vanilla, normal flavored cake for people who are not adventurous with their cakes. But it was the most surprising to me because I don't know, I was expecting it to be boring, but it was just good. It was just delicious. Also, I didn't bother to wait long enough for the buttercream to soften all the way to get like back to room temperature because I was fed up with the cakes at this point. I was just ready to be done with them. So I was putting cold buttercream onto these cakes, and you don't really want to do that. So for the key lime cakes, I took the lime cream cheese frosting and spread that in between each of the layers, and then added the graham cracker crumble to it. And these cakes were so big. Like, they were trying to fall apart, like in half, every time I tried to move each one of them, which was nerve-wracking, but it turned out alright. I did not film the part where I actually frosted the cakes, because why? It looks the exact same as crumb coating, but with more frosting. That's that, That's it, that's just how it goes. Oh, I forgot about this part. So the decorations. I made records out of fondant. I just took some black fondant, rolled it out, and then cut some circles. I got circle cutters from the cake store. It was like a 6.5 inch and a 4.5 inch, I think, that I used. And I just did a bunch of them. Like, I just did like 3 of each size. I didn't need that many. Originally, my plan was like to put 2 on the cake. I think I ended up putting like 4. So I used the circle cutters to cut out the records, and then a shot glass to cut out the middle of the smaller one. And initially I went in with like a fondant tool to try and get the circles in there, but it wasn't turning out very clean. So I pulled out every cup imaginable that I have in my kitchen. Like, seriously, every kind of cup that I have in my kitchen I pulled out for this. And just kind of like use the tops to make indentions in the fondant to make the grooves, that records have. Obviously, I wasn't going to go in there and make like hundreds of them, just enough so they looked somewhat like records. For the middle part where it's like the label or whatever, I made 2 different colors. The colors for the cake were orange, like a fuchsia pink, and black. So I did orange and pink for the little center label parts. So I just added some red and orange food color gel to some white fondant until I got the right kind of orange, and used the same cups that I used to cut out the centers of each record to cut out the circles that I needed. And for the pink one, I had some mauve fondant left over from the Nightmare Before Christmas cake. Into that I just added some like rose pink, I think it was, and it made the exact right color that I needed. And I did the exact same thing to those too. So the circles, I took the circles and I put them inside the circles that I cut out. And then I used a paintbrush to go around the outside edges with some water to get the fondant to stick to each other. And then I took a piping tip and cut out holes in the center, and then used that same shot glass, it's plastic, to make an indentation in the little circles. So then once they dried, I had them drying for days. The records were the first thing I started on. But I made a paint mixture of like some of that, like the black pearl dust that I had, and just some black food coloring with some food grade alcohol. Mixed them all together to make a paint, and painted the black part. the record part of the record, not the label, but the record, to make it shiny. What I didn't do was film the part where I painted on, like what was it? 50 and Fabulous and Happy Birthday and like 1972 for the year that she was born and whatnot. That was a very tedious process. It was truly one of the last things that I did. And I was just done. I was just done working on this cake by then, so I didn't film that part. I'm sorry. So for the bottom tier, I wanted to do the disco silhouettes, like in the reference picture that she gave me. And this was such a tedious process. It took so long. I wanted 12. I needed 12, and I think I used all but one of them for the cake. I had to cut out rectangles that would fit the size that I wanted. They ended up being too big to like fit on the cakes. However, it worked out in the long run. They were sticking up a little bit above the bottom tier, but I didn't mind. Like, it looked fine. It looked great, actually. So it was alright. But yeah, that's Big Head Tony. That movie. I don't want to spend all my time sitting here complaining about that movie. No, never mind. Because I got enough out in the beginning, I think. If I wasn't already tainted
by what I saw in the R-rated version, and the way the characters are now, maybe I would go back and watch the TV version, but I haven't noticed that. Even though I'm still curious to know what is the actual TV version that has everybody waiting on the movie. You know what I mean?
Because it just pissed me off. Alright, I'm done. False. You know how I said
in the commentary video that you have those movies that you watch and you're not sure about them, and then you spend thinking about it forever, and the kind of indication of what we did right. And in this case, I think it was one of those occasions where I was like, no, it's just wrong. There was no retribution in the end for like, oh shit, it's that funny and shit, everyone's got up to upset and did, and
it was just dumb. So on the left, you'll see Big Head Tony. On the right was my mama. That's Miss Ednette and Steph and Bobby and another Big Head Tony. I don't know who that girl is. A rando. Covering cakes with fondant. I hate it so much. Practice, though. Practice makes progress. I covered the 8-inch tier first. Smallest one. I used the leftover fondant from the records as a reference for the color that I needed for the pink and orange tiers. Here was the problem. I didn't have enough fondant in general. Like, black fondant I had plenty of. White fondant that I colored myself, I did not have enough of that fondant. So I was pinching. It was down to the wire. Like, I'm pretty sure I have 0 white fondant in my stocks now because I used it all. So when I put it on there, it was all lopsided. Then I had the bright idea to pull it off and put it back on another way so that I could cover it a little bit more. I should have started over, but again, I didn't have enough fondant to do that, and I was determined not to leave the house, and by this point it was Friday morning, and I didn't have time to do that because I had to be somewhere at 6 o'clock. So there was a ton of cracks, a ton of tears, and I just had to go in and fix it. So what I did was made a fondant paste, just added a bunch of water to a glob of fondant until it got a pasty texture, and then went in and filled in the cracks and the tears as much as I possibly could. This is a trick that you can use if you have like a small tear or a little bit of cracking in your fondant, yeah, go ahead and use this. I learned it from my virtual mentor, Miss Yolanda, the seam hider. I learned it from her. It works. I just don't recommend using it to fix an issue like this. Because basically the whole thing was covered in fondant paste. And me fixing all of my mistakes. I mean, it worked out in the long run, but I don't recommend doing it this way. Use it if you have like a seam or a crack or a small tear, but like don't use it to cover the whole entire cake like I did. I didn't record the middle tier because I knew it was going to go pretty much the same way. And it did, but a little bit better. It wasn't as disastrous as the 8-inch. But I covered the 12-inch tier was the one, the bottom tier was the one I covered in orange fondant. And then I took my silhouettes, which had been drying for a couple days. I took those and kind of stuck them on with water. Just brushed a little water on the back, slapped that on the cake, and it turned out really cute. Like I said, they weren't small enough to fit exactly to the size of the cake. They poked up over the top, but I liked it that way. It was really cute. So the middle tier, the strawberry lemonade tier, the 10-inch, I just covered in black fondant. And that went much better. Much better. And actually, I successfully, for the very first time, managed to cover a cake with fondant without any issues. I did it. I was successful. Practice makes progress. And I really needed that win. I did. Oh, and my sister called me. It's ridiculous how much they cost. And they're that small. And honestly, most of them were tacky to me. I just successfully covered a cake for the first time with fondant. Well, I've put fondant on cakes before, but I've never been successful. So to this middle tier, I took what was left over of the orange and pink fondant and just cut like little drop shapes out of it of varying sizes and kind of just drape them haphazardly around the cake. I just wanted like a trippy drop flower petal design or whatever the design that you call that. So I did some that were just orange, some that were just pink, and then others that I layered like both of them one on top of the other. And then I went back in and cut out some circles and just like randomly stuck those onto the cake as well. This was my favorite tier before the cake got stacked. It turned out very lovely, and again, I needed that win to boost my morale because I was so done. Here's the thing. You heard me talk about how I had to transport all these pieces that I made for the cake and then keep them in a random fridge overnight and then transport them again to the actual location and then set the cake up at that location. I was by myself, so it didn't get filmed. Just imagine me sweating and shaking and freaking the out, practically hyperventilating, praying, and then stacking this thing. So I put the bubble tea straws as the support in the bottom tier and the middle tier, and then I had a rhinestone trim that I got off of Amazon that I just stuck on the top tier. I stuck the disco balls, which I got from Amazon. I got a big disco ball from Amazon, and then I got little smaller ones that actually had holes in the bottom for me to put like cake pop sticks into the bottom of the smaller ones. So I used those to prop up the big one. I stuck those in the top of the cake, and then I stuck my chosen few records that I wanted to use. I stuck those on. I just stuck some toothpicks into the hole in the middle to keep them up. And that's what I did. Truly, I was very proud of it. It turned out really lovely, and Mom adored it, and I'm so grateful. But I was so anxious that entire party. I sat at the table right next to the cake and just stared at it the whole time because that gosh darn middle tier was too soft and the temperature was too warm. And so once the cake started warming up, it started to sink. And it started to sink immediately. All I wanted was to cut into this cake so that I could breathe. I was an anxious mess at that party. I couldn't do anything other than sit there and stare at it, watching it slowly collapse in on itself. The fondant started to melt and leak down the cake. And I mean, ultimately, it was a slow process. But I told my mom, I was like, if you don't get here and we don't cut into this cake as soon as we possibly can, and this thing collapses before we get the chance to do that, I am going to have a meltdown. It was all right. It held up for as long as it needed to hold up. But by the end of the night, when it's time to sing Happy Birthday, as you can see, it's very much leaning and like looks like it's about to topple over. After that point, I was too busy actually serving up the cake to get any footage of anybody eating it, but I promise you they did. They ate it. They ate all of it. By the time I left there, that cake was 90% gone. Once that thing was cut into and everybody got cake, I was like,
peace out, homies, I'm done. This is all I came here for.
Sorry. I mean, also, I might have been there to celebrate my mom's birthday. The cakes tasted great. They tasted absolutely fantastic. Every single one of them was delicious. The French vanilla was the most surprising. The strawberry lemonade had the most impact on me. The key lime never fails. It's always good, so. It was a success overall. She was happy. I'm grateful. Mom, I love you. I'm glad that I got to do this for you. But never again. I just want to sleep. Oh. Bye.
Oh my gosh, I absolutely love my birthday cake. It's perfect. It's everything that I wanted. Thank